bell above the door chimed, a bright, familiar sound against the morning sizzle of bacon and the low hum of conversation. Arthur dried his hands on his apron, his eyes crinkling in a smile, as Mrs. Gable, a regular for 20 years, took her usual booth. "The usual, Martha," he called out. "You know it, Arthur," she replied, her voice warm. "And don't you dare skimp on the hash browns." Arthur laughed, a quiet, rumbling sound. This was his world. Eleanor's Place, a small diner tucked away on a cobblestone side street, was his sanctuary. He'd opened it 3 decades ago with his late wife, and it was more home than the quiet apartment above it. The wood grain of the counter was worn smooth by countless elbows, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee and maple syrup. He was a simple man. He owned a simple diner. He was, by all accounts, perfectly content. That contentment was rattled the moment his daughter, Elara, walked in with him. Elara was his heart, but lately she seemed to be orbiting a different sun. That sun was Julian. Julian, who walked into the diner and didn't see charm. He saw old linoleum. He didn't smell coffee. He smelled grease. He looked at Arthur's apron with a faint, tight smile that didn't reach his cold, assessing eyes. "Dad, this is Julian," Elara said, her voice a little too bright, a little too strained. "A pleasure," Arthur said, extending a hand. Julian looked at the hand, calloused, clean, but unmistakably a working man's hand, for a half-second too long before giving it a brief, limp shake. "Charming place, Arthur. Really, retro. It's brave, keeping a place like this going in the modern market." Arthur just nodded, pulling back his hand. "Coffee?" "Just a bottled water. Mineral, if you have it," Julian said, brushing a speck of dust from his $1,000 coat. He sat stiffly in the booth, his gaze cataloging every crack in the vinyl. "Elara tells me you've been doing this your whole life." "Most of it," Arthur said, placing the water on the table. "Good for you." "Honest work," Julian said, the words honest work sounding like a consolation prize for a terminal diagnosis. "Me? I'm in finance, venture capital. We're funding the future, you know, disrupting old models." He jested vaguely at the diner. "No offense." "None taken," Arthur said, his voice mild. He'd met men like Julian before, men who mistook a high-gloss finish for solid wood. The visit was blessedly short, but the real test came a week later. Julian was hosting an engagement party. Not a simple backyard barbecue, but a catered affair at a modern glass-walled rented mansion overlooking the city. "And Dad," Elara had said, twisting her new, blindingly large diamond ring around her finger. It's black tie. Julian's partners will be there, investors. It's really important for his image." "I have a suit," Arthur said. "I know," Elara said, avoiding his eyes. "But Julian, he offered to, he has a stylist who could find you something more appropriate. He said he'd even pay for it." The implication hung in the air, heavy and sour. "You are not good enough. Your suit is not good enough. You will embarrass us." "Thank you, Elara," Arthur said, his voice perfectly level. "But the suit I have will do just fine. It was good enough for your mother's funeral. It will be good enough for this." Elara flinched, but she didn't argue. The night of the party, Arthur arrived in his 10-year-old, impeccably maintained sedan. He parked it between a Maserati and a high-end Tesla. He wore his suit, a classic dark wool, perfectly pressed. It was simple, timeless, and utterly without a designer label. He walked into a wall of noise, music, laughter, and the high-pitched hum of people performing success. Julian, draped in a velvet smoking jacket, saw him enter. His smile froze, then reformed, strained to the breaking point. He strode over, not to welcome him, but to manage him. "Arthur, you made it." He gripped Arthur's elbow, his fingers tight, and began steering him away from the main cluster of guests. "Look, the patio is lovely. Why don't you get some air? I'll have a server bring you a drink." "I'd rather say hello to my daughter," Arthur said, gently removing his arm. "She's networking, Arthur." "You wouldn't want to interrupt." Before Arthur could respond, Julian was pulled away by a man with a booming laugh, leaving Arthur standing alone by a towering, grotesque ice sculpture. He watched for an hour. He watched his daughter, Ilara, laugh too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. He watched her touch Julian's arm, her eyes flitting nervously around the room, constantly checking who was watching. And he watched Julian, who moved through the crowd like a shark, all teeth and predator's grace. He never once looked in Arthur's direction. Dinner was announced. Guests moved to a grand ballroom. A young woman with a clipboard and an earpiece stopped Arthur. "Your name, sir?" "Arthur Griffin. I'm Ilara's father." She scanned the list, then scanned it again, her brow furrowed. "Oh, yes, Mr. Griffin. We have you at table 19, just through here." Through here was not in the main ballroom. It was a small adjacent room, connected by a service corridor. It held 2 tables, clearly an afterthought. Table 19 was shared with the coat-check girl on her break, and 2 members of the string quartet, who were wolfing down bread rolls before their next set. The main ballroom was visible only through a narrow doorway, the sound muffled. It was a deliberate, calculated insult, a shunning. Arthur sat. He unfolded his napkin. A server, looking surprised to see him, rushed over. "Sir? Can I get you something?" "A glass of water would be fine, thank you," Arthur said. He was invisible, and he knew, with a cold, sinking certainty, that this was Julian's doing. He ate his chicken, which was cold. He listened to the distant murmur of speeches. Finally, he saw Julian take the microphone in the main room, his form silhouetted in the doorway. "Thank you all for coming." Julian's voice was slick, amplified by the speakers. "To celebrate me and my beautiful fiancée, Ilara." Applause. "I'm a man who believes in a simple motto: create your own destiny. I didn't get where I am by waiting for handouts." He paused, and his eyes flicked, almost imperceptibly, toward the service doorway where Arthur sat. "We all have origins. We all start somewhere. Some starts are just humbler than others." A few of his friends chuckled. "But what matters isn't where you start. It's how far you fly from it. It's about shedding that old skin, about evolving, about leaving the past and the people stuck in it behind." It was not a veiled insult. It was a public execution. Arthur's heart didn't break. It hardened. He looked down at his hands, the hands that had built a life, paid for Ilara's education, held his wife as she passed. He slowly, deliberately, placed his knife and fork on his plate. As Julian's speech ended to robust applause, Arthur stood. He walked out of the side room, not back onto the patio, but through the service corridor and directly into the main ballroom. Heads turned. The music hadn't started yet, and the room was in a momentary lull. Arthur walked calmly, not toward Julian, but toward a table at the very front. At that table sat a distinguished, white-haired man, Robert Harrison. He was the CEO of the city's largest philanthropic trust, the Harrison Foundation. Julian had been trying to get a meeting with him for 6 months. Arthur walked directly to him. Julian, seeing this, began to panic. He rushed over, his face a mask of false charm. "Arthur!" "What are you?" "Mr. Harrison, Julian Vance. We haven't been formally introduced, but—" Robert Harrison's eyes, however, had locked on Arthur. His face broke into a smile of genuine, unadulterated shock and delight. "Arthur?" Harrison said, standing and clapping Arthur on the shoulder, completely ignoring Julian. "Arthur Griffin! What in the world are you doing here? I thought you hated these things." Julian froze. His smile twitched. You two know each other?" "Know him?" Harrison laughed, a deep, booming sound that turned more heads. "Ladies and gentlemen, do you know who this is?" The room quieted. "This man, who I haven't been able to drag to a gala in 10 years, is the founder and silent benefactor of the Eleanor Griffin Foundation." A gasp went through the room. The Eleanor Griffin Foundation was the city's most respected and most mysterious charitable organization. It had funded the new Children's Hospital wing. It endowed the university's research grant. Its founder was famously anonymous, known only by the foundation's name. "Arthur Griffin," Elara whispered, stepping forward. She had never connected her mother's name to the charity. She thought her father's diner was named Eleanor's Place, just because. "He told me he was busy tonight," Harrison continued, beaming at Arthur. "Said he had to flip burgers. This man right here has donated over $50 million to this city, and he does it all while running the best diner in the state. Arthur, you magnificent liar." Julian's face was the color of chalk. He looked from Harrison, the kingmaker, to Arthur, the diner cook. The math wasn't adding up. The world wasn't making sense. $50 million? Julian stammered. "At least," Harrison said dismissively. "Now, Arthur, you must tell me. What brought you out of hiding? And," he lowered his voice, "why in God's name were you sitting by the kitchen?" Arthur's gaze slowly moved from Harrison to Julian. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The entire room, following his gaze, understood. They saw Julian's velvet jacket. They remembered his slick speech about leaving the past behind. And they saw the man he had hidden by the coat room. The silence was deafening. Julian's networking targets, the investors, the partners, they all stared at him with a new, dawning, icy contempt. Elara was white, her hands over her mouth. "Dad," she breathed, the word a question, an apology, a realization. Arthur looked at his daughter. His expression was not angry. It was just sad. He looked at her, then at the glittering, obnoxious ring on her finger. "The suit, Julian," Arthur said, his voice quiet but carrying in the dead-still room, "was a gift from my wife. The diner is named after her. The foundation is in her memory. You didn't just insult me. You insulted her." He turned to Harrison. "Robert, It was good to see you, but I find the atmosphere here a little lacking." "Arthur, wait!" Alara cried, starting forward. But Arthur just shook his head. He turned and walked, not to the side exit, but straight through the center of the ballroom. The guests parted for him like the sea. He didn't look back. He walked out the front door, past the valet, and to his 10-year-old sedan, the most valuable car in the lot. The next morning, the bell on the diner door chimed. Arthur was wiping the counter just as he did every day. Alara stood in the doorway. She was pale. She was alone. Her finger was bare. The diamond was gone. She didn't speak for a long time. She just looked around the diner, really seeing it for the first time. The warm wood, the photographs on the wall of her and her mother, the quiet dignity of the place. "He's gone," she finally whispered, sliding onto a stool. "His partners are dropping him." The bank called. The loan for the party, his car, it was all leveraged against an investment that didn't exist. Arthur just poured her a cup of coffee. He built a house on sand, honey. A strong wind was bound to come. Alara stared into the black coffee. Tears welled and dropped onto the counter. "I was so ashamed of you, Dad. I was so stupid. I was so busy looking at the shine. I forgot to check for gold." "We all make mistakes, Alara," Arthur said, placing a hand over hers. "The important part is learning from them." She looked up, her eyes meeting his. "You built an empire in her name, and I never even saw it." "It's not an empire," Arthur said. "It's a life, and it's real." He slid an apron across the counter toward her. "The breakfast rush is about to start." Alara looked at the apron. She picked it up, her fingers tracing the embroidered Eleanor's place. She stood, untied the silk sash from her expensive dress, and tied the simple cotton apron around her waist. "What do I do first?" she asked, her voice finally steady. Arthur smiled, a real full smile. "You can start by pouring Mrs. Gable a refill. And don't skimp on the coffee."